Welcome to That's What She Said, where we'll spill the tea on women empowerment in the Great Lakes Bay region with your host, Christiana Malacara.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of That's What She Said. Thank you so much for tuning in this week on That's What She Said Day, my favorite day of the week. I am your host, Christiana Malacara. And there are so many ways that you can pour into yourself, right? If that's through a friend or journaling or, just going and taking a walk by yourself in the silence. Those are all ways of self-growth. Developing yourself as a human. I know the show we have here called That's What She Said is geared towards women, but we also have tons of men listeners who are just ready to learn more, no matter what the topic is. So the days and times that you can tune in to That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara are Thursdays live on social media at 1:30. You can also tune in on the radio waves or at WSGW.com on Saturday at 8 a.m. or Sunday at 6 p.m. YouTube is a great resource. We have an archive of all of our episodes there. You can scroll back and hear stories from women over the past year. And then anywhere you find your favorite podcast, my favorite is Spotify. You can find us there under That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara. So those who have been following us for some time have probably noticed that Christiana herself, aka me, has learned a thing or two about myself, right? Having women in this room sitting across from me has just been an absolute honor. Absolute honor. There's no other way. I wish I could, put a crown on each and every one of them and say, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. And so I'm learning about myself as well, along in this journey. And so I started journaling. Many of you have known that I'm journaling now. It's not really writing words or sentences down into stories, but more or less just kind of random thoughts. Because that's where we're at right now. And something that I had wrote down from the previous episode to this was control, right? The word control. And there's so many things that are within our control, and then there's so many things that are without of our control. We cannot control this thing, but I can control this thing. And identifying those and saying, well, what can I do to make my space, my people, my circle, my community a better thing? Those are things that are within my control. And then obviously Christiana doing her Christiana thing, I challenged it, right? Well, what if there's something that's out of my control that I could put in my control? And how do I do that? Who do I need to communicate with? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to get involved in this thing? So that way I can have more control over what I need to. So that way I can be a better person. If you're a mother, if you're a wife, if you're a sister, if you're a teacher, well, all those many hats that we wear as women, how can I be a better woman? And what's in my control, but also what's out of my control that I can bring in to be a better person? So as you navigate through your week, please take a moment to reflect on that. How can I be a better person? How can I be a better me? And what can I change that's in or out of my control? So as we have a guest every week, I have a very cool lady across from me today. We have Miss Jennifer Austin. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat.
Thank you very much. It sounded like a fun opportunity, so I was glad to come.
That's one thing that it is. It's fun. It's fun for me anyway. Sometimes ladies across from me get a little like, oh, I'm nervous. But it's fun.
It is. And I am nervous. I'm not going to lie. But I think I've been listening to your podcast myself. You've had some great guests on.
Thank you.
Very excited to learn more about other women in the Great Lakes Bay region. That is just so awesome. But yeah, for sure. Like the idea when you approached me about this, I'm like, that just sounds like so much fun to be part of and be able to talk about the things I've done, and not in a way of like, oh, I need to brag about myself. It's what can I do to help somebody else?
Yeah. A lot of times on the show, we talk about a ripple effect, right? And each woman making a move, big or small, is creating a ripple effect. And, those things grow and we never know where it ends up. It could be to the ends of the water, right?
Yeah.
But Jennifer, could you please share how the community might know you?
Oh gosh, lots of different ways. I'm a mom to 5 children, although 2 of them are out of the house. 3 of them are still in the Dow High school system. So I'm a mom and a swim mom, and obviously, a wife. Although I don't know, my husband would be like, I don't think you really play wife too much.
Okay.
That's not how the community knows you. But yeah, so I'm the chair of the Midland County Democratic Party. And I also have a podcast, Beyond Resistance podcast, where we talk about how people can get active in the political sphere. So that's probably the 2 ways most people know me.
A mom of 5.
Yes.
That's a full-time job in itself. And then you
Yes.
listed multiple things after.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, to be fair, it's kind of a progression. Like if you looked back at my life, it's like, oh, I, got a degree and I had children very young. So that kind of limited some of my options. But got that degree and got the job and I was the mom and the, working mom and whatever. And then eventually I became a stay-at-home mom, which was never in my cards, not anything on my list. But then staying home, I'm like, okay, well, now this gives me a little bit of time to write. So I'm also a writer. I forgot to mention that.
A writer.
And then we moved back to Midland. We had been away for a couple of years. And then I started getting involved in politics. And it was just kind of this accumulation as the kids got older and I had a little bit more free time that I was able to add so many more other things into my repertoire.
Well, that's interesting in the sense of, you said mom first when you introduced yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So starting to feel like that's the first big hat you had to wear.
Yes.
But your career progressed, as you said, momming slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, do you feel like that's like a normal wave, or is that, is that okay to do?
Oh, for sure. I think that is not the way that I had planned on my life going. I was going to go to school and there was, it was a 5-year program and I was going to get this degree and I was going to have this career and marriage and kids and everything. Like that would happen. That was fine, but it was not really part of the main plan. And then I found out my freshman year of college that I was pregnant, and everything flipped. Because when opportunities present themselves, when change comes, you have to find, you have to find the good in it. You have to figure out a way to accommodate that change and make the best of it for yourself and for other people who are affected by that change. So, and that's just kind of how my life went. It was, I was expecting a child. Well, that child became the focus. Sure, I got a 2-year degree instead of the 5-year degree. I got a job. I got, I did all the things I needed to do for myself as much as I could. How did that affect, my first child? And that's just kind of how my life went. There was various changes along the way, but it was always like, what's the core that you have to look at? What's the most important thing? And then how can I work these changes in around that?
So we're going to come back to that asking yourself what the core is. But in the time where you had to make that pivot, you're like, oh, freshman in college, I kind of had this plan, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oops, like this is great, but this is the plan. And this, that teeter-totter back and forth of decision making, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was it that you were like, okay, who was it that was like, okay, let's talk. Let's pause for a minute. Let's realign. This is the track we're going to go on. Or was it just chaotic the whole way through?
I wouldn't say it was yes, it was chaotic the whole way through. But I'm a person that I might be presented with a challenge or a change. Change is challenge for me. That has always been an issue. And even more so in my younger days, I'm getting now to where I can adapt to it more quickly. But I always struggled with change. And it was but I'm also a person that's like, okay, I'm going to panic internally for a little bit about this thing, and then I'm going to make a plan. And then we move forward.
Plan.
And it doesn't matter that, I might have breakdowns someday, or there might be days where I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? But I make a plan and I move forward with that as best I can.
So a plan. So step one. Okay. So women out there listening who are like, I don't know what to do. That internal panic. Like you said, you panic for a little bit, and that's normal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's normal in so many ways. My light went on and I need gas. Oh no, panic, right? Like in the smallest ways. Step one, take a deep breath, make a plan. What's step two?
Execute the plan.
Great idea, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't really, it's executing the plan. It's looking at the plan, and being flexible, because you can make all the plans in the world you want, and guaranteed they are going to change. Something else is going to come up. Something is going to be different. Like in this instance where, we're talking about, I had my daughter when I was 19, and I got married shortly after that, and we had another child. And then a few years later, we got divorced. Like, I didn't see that coming. That was not part of the plan per se.
Yeah.
So then it was like a whole new life change. And how do you do this? And I had to say, okay, my 2 kids, they're my core. I have to have a job, which I did at the time, to support them. I have to have a home to support, for them to live in. So it was like, what do we need to move forward? Okay, now we do this, we do this, we do this, until we get to a point where we were totally stable.
So in this plan making process, and it sounds to me, based off of all of your current achievements we listed off in the beginning, you've had to make a plan or two in the past. What does that look like for you? Are we communicating? Are we communicating with your best friend? Or are we writing things down? What are we doing?
No. Now plans are much more like with my husband and I, my current husband, we communicate a lot more. We have plans together. It's not just previously it was more like, I'm making this plan and how much is this other person going to mess it up? But now it's, we make plans together, and in all of my life stuff, I mean, I have friends and family that you would talk to, but I wouldn't really say I'd make a ton of plans with any of them. I currently have, I have groups of friends, some that are closer than others, a lot of them related to the Democratic Party or our podcast, or, the things that I do now, that I do sit down and talk about these things with. And that I love, because it is, and that's one thing I've definitely learned with the Democratic Party. I'm the chair, we have secretary and treasurer, and then we have a whole slew of vice chairs. I have found that, and when I first started, I was very nervous about making decisions or saying, this is what we should do, because I don't know, I wasn't sure if I was making the right decisions or if I knew what we should do. And I've become more confident in that. But I've also learned, like, here's what I think we should do. And then we would all get together and talk about it. And somebody would be like, oh, hey, but did you think of this? No, I didn't. That's awesome. Thank you. Or somebody else would say, well, did you think of this? I'm like, yeah, but I didn't think that was that important. Tell me more. And we might say, yes, it is important, or no, it's not. But just that feedback, that group, getting together and really talking about things together and seeing things from perspectives you might not have thought of in your daily life is really fantastic.
So step one, make the plan. Step two, be flexible. Step three, have an open mind.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you'd make plans and say, oh, who's going to ruin my plan? Or, all right, this is how they might interfere, but this is my plan. So when you moved into your marriage and you started making plans together, was that hard to do? Because you feel like a very independent woman.
A little bit. It was, to start with, my husband is an amazing man who is just, he has his own ideas, but he's a listener, and he isn't like, we have to do things my way. It's very much a give and take, which was just, it's a fantastic way to work with somebody, whether you're talking about somebody you work with, somebody that you're married to, whatever. You need people to be open to what you have to say. So that is a really good thing. It was a little hard, just like, because we were together for, I think, 3 years, and he actually moved out to Harbor Beach in the Thumb. So I had lived here in Midland, and he was in the Thumb. So we were doing sort of this long distance relationship thing for 3 years. And when it came time that we were going to move in together and eventually get married, I was moving out there. I was a architectural CAD technician. There were no jobs in the Thumb for me. And we were like, well, and then this is when I became a stay-at-home mom. My husband was really liked that idea, mainly just for the sake of the children, like not having to take them to daycare and having a parent home. He would have done that. If I made more money than him, he'd have done that in a heartbeat. And I wished I'd have made more money than him, because he was kind of more maternal than I am. But yeah, no, it was a definite change, because it was like, I don't have a paycheck anymore. This is so weird. I do not know how to handle this. So it definitely took some time for us to adjust to me depending on him. I had become so anti wanting to depend on anybody that was a definite adjustment.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that. It's a shift in identity. A total flip here.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you said he's a listener. I recently I don't know if I was reading or listening or seeing or something, and it said marriages are not 100% and 100%. 100% from spouse one, 100% from spouse two. That sometimes I can only give 20% today.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I recognize that, my spouse is only able to give 40% today. So I need to make up. So that way together we have 100%. Yes. So do you believe in that theory?
Oh, for sure. And my husband and I for sure do that. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's days where, he's only giving 20%, or on a day when I might give 20%, where we're like, oh, come on, you need to give a little bit more, like nobody's perfect. We're all human. But for the most part, we can recognize, I'll be like, okay, kids, dad's having a stressful day at work. We both work from home.
Oh,
so forgot to mention that little thing. So we're in our separate little desks and office areas and doing our work, and I can kind of hear what's going on with him, so I can generally tell, oh yeah, that meeting was a little more stressful than usual. But and when the kids are at school, it's not such a big deal, but like summertime, they're all home.
Everybody's home,
and my husband tried going into the office to work, and he's like, I don't know, I just can't do it, but the kids are home and they're so noisy. You got to pick one, so I can't help you on this.
They're being kids,
exactly, and he knows that, and he's not like upset at them at all. It's just a matter of trying to figure out got
to make a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Make the plan for like, okay, you guys play your video games for this time because dad's on a meeting, and then he doesn't have to hear you because you're doing the video game. And then you can run around and do stuff later.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that. So you threw in there CAD tech. Is that something you do currently?
No, it is not. I have not done that since 2006, I think, when I moved to Harbor Beach. I still love it. Like I'm thinking about getting back into the full-time workforce. I do some contract work for a friend of mine. Variety of stuff, a lot of clerical, that kind of thing. But I'm not working full time. I mean, my volunteer jobs are full time, and my podcasting and all, that stuff. Like, I work full time. I just don't get paid full time.
I can relate. Yes. So CAD tech, for someone who is listening, they're like, what is that job? Because I want to dive into that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Computer aided drafting and design. I've worked I've technically only worked with 2 different companies. One was a civil engineering company in Midland. It's not there anymore. The company still exists in Wisconsin, but their satellite office closed in Midland. But I actually helped draw up the plans for, and don't anybody be mad at me, the US 10 Eastman Road Bridge and exits.
That's why. Okay. Yeah.
I helped draw that. I did not make the decisions on it, so nobody blame me. But yes, I helped work on that.
So that is something that is very analytical, that this is the black or white,
Mhm.
that this is something that we need. Here we go again, a plan, and we need to execute this. Not only the larger picture of who, like you said, I write this up, who gets it approved, the finances behind it. Like there's a process to this.
Yes.
And now we're doing podcasting.
Yeah, I know.
Quite organic here.
I'm a widely different person, but I approach everything in similar ways. I'm a spreadsheet queen. I love spreadsheets. I was making spreadsheets when I was like, I don't know, in middle school and didn't really know what spreadsheets were. It's just, I love data and I love organizing things in a way that makes sense to me, that I can then quickly go back and pull this piece or that piece or share it with somebody. So yeah, I like my plans. I like my organization.
I really it's really fun to have someone on board here that has a podcast. So we are going to take a quick break, and right now we're speaking with Jennifer Austin, and when we come back, and please join us back, because we're going to dive a little deeper into who is Jennifer and what are we talking about on her podcast. So come on back to That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara.
That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara is back. Now let's spill the tea.
Thank you for coming back to the second half of That's What She Said. Today we have Jennifer Austin with us, and in the last segment she was just spilling the tea on stay-at-home mom and how does that work, the shift in identity and being a planner, which I know there's about half of you ladies out there who are just like, I plan to get up in the morning and that's as far as my plan goes. So we all have those days. But we ended on a note of, I've actually never, well, no, not never. This is the second woman I've had across from me who has a podcast themselves. And I want to know more about Jennifer's podcast. So thank you for coming on, Jennifer. I appreciate you being here.
Glad to be here.
What is the name of your podcast and what do you talk about?
So it's called the Beyond Resistance podcast. I do it with my best friend, Sarah Schultz, and its purpose is to help, especially like blue organizers, Democratic organizers in places where it's more red or Republican, to figure out ways to increase their blue power in their areas. It kind of started with, it's something that I have been thinking about for years, just because of all the work I've done with the Democratic Party here and all of the accomplishments that we've had. I've thought about, well, can we write a manual? Can we, what can we do to disseminate that information? And I've even talked to the Michigan Democratic Party, and they didn't seem too keen on getting that information from us. So fine, then I will just get it out there myself. But yeah, we just talk about how local people can organize in their communities to try to do some of the same things or different things that we've done in Midland.
Organizing.
Yes.
Planning.
Yes. My skills.
and that's great, because what you're doing essentially is leaning into the skills that you're like, I know how to do this.
Yes.
Let me lean into that.
Yeah.
I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I'm here to share information that I've learned has been successful in a way that I know how to teach you. And Yeah, podcast, super cool. And you said you're doing this with your best friend.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're going to write a book about it too, but we're kind of like leaning on the podcast now because that tends to, you need a platform in order to get a nonfiction book published often. So we're hoping to build that and convince somebody to produce this book.
So the passion of politics, where did that come from?
I think it's kind of been a lifelong, I can remember my father is a staunch Republican. And, you know, I used to be like, that's, you know, I can't believe they're doing that. That's not fair and whatever. And he would be like, well, as you get older, you will become more conservative. Joke's on you, Dad. I literally became more liberal. But just it's always been, I think it really starts with my sense of fairness and justice, wanting to see that in whatever form that takes. And I was student council president, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And didn't really do a lot with it after high school. Obviously, I had children early. I was thinking about providing them food and a home, et cetera. You know, that as many people do, they don't think about politics because they have their own lives to deal with. And then that's in and of itself a lot.
Yeah, that's a full-time job.
Yes. So, you know, it just kind of this progression. And of course, after 2016, that I became much more concerned about like, what more can I do? And that was a little bit of volunteering and a little bit of getting involved. And it just kind of snowballed and became what I am now.
Wow. So we're talking about a ripple effect. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know if I said that on or off the air at this point, but we were talking about starting a pattern, right? Do you see, and we're going to go to that word empowerment, do you see that you're creating a ripple effect within your home and your children?
Oh, for sure. I mean, some days they're like, oh, Mom, politics, not again. But then they'll say something like, I'm just trying to remember, you know, they'll just say something and I'll be like, yeah, I taught you that.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. I'm teaching you to be. I have 4 boys too. Okay. So, you know, my daughter's older and she's very liberal. And then there's my 4 boys who are any variety of sort of person. And just, they'll just say something and I'm like, you're welcome.
So now let's talk about Dad. He created a ripple effect too, but it wasn't exactly what he planned for you. Have you had a conversation with him? I'm going to assume you have, but about kind of your current endeavors and what his perspective may be on these things.
Oh yeah, we have lots of conversations. He is very proud and very supportive. He also sees the stress it puts on me. So I think to some extent he would love for me to, I don't want to say back off, but maybe find different avenues. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've been chair of the Midland Dems for 4.5 years. I have another 1.5 years on this tenure. So I don't know that I'll do that again, but I'm not going to not be involved. I would just like to make room for other people to also do this work as well.
So what are some of the stressors?
It's a lot of work. So when I first started doing this, the previous chair was like, oh, it's just a couple hours a week. And I will give him credit. At that time, it probably was. The Midland County Democratic Party was very small. We had no power and we had no way to really facilitate power in our community. I came in on a year when the Michigan redistricting program had started. And a friend of mine who had worked with Voters Not Politicians, she really sat me down and said, hey, look, we have an opportunity here to help influence what kind of districts that we have here in Midland. And I was like, okay, you know, like, let's go to one of these hearings and, you know, show me what you're talking about. Because I was such a newbie. I was just so new on this stuff. So we go and I see the mechanisms for how they're conducting these hearings and the online way you could put in information about what you thought your district should look like. And so I looked at what all those mechanisms were, and I'm like, how can we use those? What can we do? What's my plan? Let's organize. And we did. We organized hundreds of people. We talked about what we thought the districts should be. Those people went to hearings. They put in written statements about what they thought the districts should look like. And because of that advocacy work, we have the Michigan Congressional 8th District, which is pretty purple. It could go either way. But considering what we had before, which was an absolute Republican blowout, it's a huge upgrade for us. And then the state Senate district, the 35th state Senate district, that is a lean blue district, not by a ton. It could be won by a Republican for sure. But once again, creating those opportunities and chances where we could actually have a say in what our government is like, who's going to be there, the type of person that we want there, and what they're going to say once they get to Lansing.
So let's go back to, in the first half, you were talking about the core, right? When you were coming out of a divorce, you're like, who is in my core and how can I help them? That is my kids. I need to work. I need to feed them. I need to house them. So let's jump forward. And you're taking this position as the chair of the Dem Party in Midland, which already is kind of like, oh, there's a Dem Party in Midland.
Exactly. Oh, I've heard that before.
And then, but when you were like, okay, I'm going to take on this commitment year after year, what was the core?
To be fair, when I first started, it really was like, oh, it's only a couple hours a week. I can handle that. That's not a big deal. It was when I really started to look at what we could do that it became more than that. And I guess the core for me is obviously the world I want my family to be in. I have always had, like I said, a belief in fairness and justice. And I've also always had a belief that we all have, I'll say duty. We all have a duty to our country, to our community, to our global community. It's my firm belief that our purpose here on earth is to make the world a better place. And there are a billion different ways to make the world a better place. And everybody has to find that for themselves. And I did find that through influencing politics in what I consider a positive way. I'm sure there's plenty of other people that don't think that, that I'm doing in a positive way, but just whether you're giving a little of yourself or a lot of yourself, I think we all have a civic duty to try to make this world a better place.
You said justice. In the core, you said justice. Was there something that you saw or were part of to add the word justice to your core? And when was that pivoting moment? When did that happen?
I can't say of a specific moment or event. I definitely remember as a child growing up and seeing racism. And for those of you that aren't watching, I am your average white lady that grew up in an average white town in the county of Midland. There weren't a whole lot of people of color, but when there were, I could see the racism. And it was just unfair. That as a child, that's, it's unfair. I can't wrap my mind around it. It's unfair. And that just kind of has been a theme of my life. And now it's, sure, I don't know that I see a ton of injustice in my daily life in Midland. There's a reason they call it Sparkle City. But I can see it on the news. I can see it when I started to write. 2006 is when I first started to write. I write science fiction and fantasy, mostly like young adult and some adult. But one of the things that I wanted to do was to expose myself to other writings because I think that's how you become a better writer, is to understand what's out there in the market, what's popular, writing styles, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things I was very conscious of was reading books by people that did not reflect my identity. Like I said, I'm a pretty standard white woman from white America. I have a pretty standard, in that sphere, I have a standard upbringing. So in order to understand other people without, jumping in their lives and being like, may I interview you and find out what it's like to be a Black person? You read books, you read articles, you watch movies, you listen to music, you try to understand where they're coming from. And through doing that, I learned a lot more, I learned so many things, especially a lot of it with racism, but also with the LGBTQIA plus community. I'd never heard of Stonewall before. And that happened before I was born. I'd never heard about, was it the Tulsa massacre, where they burned down the Black Wall Street, essentially. I'd never heard about that. That happened long before I was born. All these parts of history, all these things that make up our country and who we are as people, whether we know they exist or not, they influence who we are. So just really, I've always had a real sense of I want to know what's going on. I want to know what I can do as a person to make the world better. Just as little as I'm not going to say something that's a microaggression, that would hurt somebody. I don't need those words, but I can find something else to say. So, yeah.
So in the realm of racism and saying, you're saying I saw injustice, specifically with racism at a young age.
Yeah.
So here we are a few years later, and you're on this trail influencing through leadership, through your voice, through advocacy. Have you spoken to someone, another woman who's in a different set of shoes, and saying, help me learn about your set of shoes, because these are mine?
I don't know that I've specifically said that to people, but the older you get and the more I get involved in the community, the more opportunity I have to talk to other women who don't reflect my identity. And I pay really close attention. I try not to use them as a resource per se. You know what I mean? I'm not please tell me everything that, goes into being a Black woman or a Hispanic woman, or, I just try to pay attention and just see what I can learn and understand, because everybody's just people, but we have different experiences being those people. And I think that's one of the things we really have to come back to is, if you are a person that's looking at somebody else, whether we're talking about an undocumented immigrant or a trans woman or, a gay person or whatever, if you're looking at that person that's weird, that's different, I don't understand, just come back to the part where they're people and build from there. And maybe you can start to understand who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and not have the negativity that often comes with it.
So this research that I'm calling it research, this research that you've done,
it's not conscious research.
Yeah, I was going to say observation.
Yes.
That you've done over years about identity outside of your own.
Mm-hmm.
How has that shifted your identity?
Oh, a lot. I mean, I think it's hard to quantify. I've found ways to not center myself. It's kind of weird because as a woman, we're conditioned to not center ourselves. So on the one hand, as a woman, I've tried to center myself more in certain situations because I think that women should take up space. I think that women should be loud and not obnoxiously loud, but you know what I mean? Let yourself be heard. Don't feel like you have to be a wallflower. But then on the other hand, there are times when I'm in a situation where I'm I'm going to take a step back because maybe I don't have the expertise for this situation or, this conversation. I can learn more than I can give. So yeah, it's just kind of, thinking about how you fit into the world and less about how the world fits around you, maybe. just being conscious of everybody around you and figuring out those times when you do need to take up space, and then maybe other times when you need to make space.
Is that what you mean when you said center yourself? You mean like have yourself the center of attention?
Yes.
Okay. And so taking up space. We talk about that sometimes on That's What She Said.
Yes, I know. The Tori, I think, was one of the last one I listened to, and I'm like, everything she said, I'm like, yes.
She's very cool. Very
Yes.
cool girl. So taking up space, is there a time, and you did touch on it, but is there a time where you feel this is not my opportunity to take up space?
For sure. I can't really pinpoint one at the moment. A lot of interactions can happen online. So especially if you're having sort of a conversation through Twitter, Facebook, whatever the online forum is that you're using, you do kind of have to look at who you're talking to and where they're coming from. And there may be times when I will take that into consideration and kind of back off and just let things be, or let the conversation flow without necessarily my input.
So this kind of goes back to a little bit of what I was talking about in the beginning of the show, saying there's things that are in our control and there's things that are outside of our control. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times those things in our control are, yes, I'm going to get out of bed. I'm going to wear this today. I'm going to have a good attitude, even though I'm not feeling so great. But then there's things outside of our control. Do you see things that are outside of your control that you're now like, I got this. I can handle that?
I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Thank you.
No, I was just kind of thinking, like, when I first started to be chair of the Midland Dems, and even now with our podcast, there's only so much that, I can't control how many people listen to our podcast. I can only try to put it out there more in social media and make sure that we have the best conversations possible. When I was chair, or I am chair, but like when I first started being chair and we didn't have a ton of power, it was like, okay, well, what things can increase that power? Well, I have control over trying to organize people. I have control over trying to build membership and bring in more money, et cetera, et cetera. Like there were things that I could control, which then gave us more access to the things that we can't control. We didn't have a voice in Congress, a Democratic voice in Congress from this area. We didn't have a Democratic voice in Congress or in Lansing at all. And now we do. And I have a way to reach them. So I don't know. I'm not sure if I really answered that, but.
No, I think that was a great piece of advice that you gave there was, once you start handling and really fine tuning what you have in control, things that are out of your control will start becoming a little more obtainable. So here we have that signature question. Mm-hmm. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
She took a deep breath. What is one piece of advice that you would give to a woman in the Great Lakes Bay region?
So I knew that was coming because I've listened before, obviously. And that is a hard one. That's a lot of pressure to put on women in this area. I just want you to know that. But the good thing is I don't have to give the most amazing answer, because there have been some fabulous answers that I was like, yes, that's exactly what I think. That's great. So I think one of the things you can do is be open to change and opportunity. I've had a lot of changes in my life that were not ever part of the plan. And change can be hard. And sometimes it can be, a negative situation, but you can always find the good in it or work with what you have to try to get back onto the plan. But always look for opportunities, because I did not ever think that I would be involved in politics or have a podcast where I would be speaking to people about trying to, build more power in their red areas for Democrats. So yeah, just be open to possibilities.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for tuning in, because that was Jennifer Austin, and That's What She Said.